In 2008, TLC would premiere 17 Kids and Counting. This show would feature the Duggars, a large family that followed strict fundamentalist Christian beliefs. The parents of the family, Jim Bob and Michelle, would showcase their daily life to the world for 7 years. Unfortunately, abuse was rampant behind the camera. The oldest child, Josh Duggar, would be caught abusing the younger children of the home. Rather than hold Josh accountable, Jim Bob and Michelle would hide this from the camera in fear of their show being canceled. All of this would begin in March of 2006 when a police report revealed that Josh had been assaulting other kids in the home starting in March of 2002. The report would state that Josh had been sneaking into the room where his 2 siblings had slept. It was there that he would assault them. By the time the report was made, he had done this 4 to 5 times. In July of that same year, Josh would assault another child while she was sleeping on the living room couch. Then in March of 2003, it would be found that Josh had been assaulting 2 other victims. In one situation, Josh would invite one of his sisters to sit on his lap so he could read her a book. Once she did so, he would begin to fondle her. This would result in the victim running out of the room and alerting one of the older children in the home. In another situation, he had put his hand up a victim's dress while she had been doing laundry. Josh would then be taken to the family church. The elders of the church would be notified of his assaults, to which they would agree he needed treatment. It would be suggested that Josh would attend the Piney Ridge program at Vista Hospital. However, Jim Bob and Michelle had concerns that he would be exposed to other offenders, and so it would be decided that he would attend a Christian program in Little Rock. This would consist of him doing counseling sessions and manual labor for 4 months, or so his parents would later state to the media. In reality, Josh was renovating a home with a family friend who had no experience with therapy or counseling. He would receive no real treatment. Once he returned, Jim Bob and Michelle would then have him confess his crimes to a state trooper named Joseph Hutchins. Joseph would give Josh what was described as a very stern talk. At this time, the police would not be contacted. In fact, Joseph would state that since Josh had already been through the treatment program, there was nothing else they could do. The same trooper would later be arrested for possession of CP and is currently serving 56 years in prison. It is also worth noting that he was and is a family friend of the Duggars. And with that, it would be determined that Josh, who had repeatedly assaulted underage victims, was safe to be around. James and Michelle Duggar would state they were both comfortable that nothing had occurred since he went through the program. They would go on to say they both felt he no longer had any problem and that all of this had been resolved. Not only this, but they would state that the entire incident had brought the family closer to God. Josh would give an apology to his victims, who then supposedly forgave him. Elders of the church were aware of the abuse and were supportive. Within the police report, it would be revealed that the reason all of this was discovered was because someone in the family wrote all of the abuse down in a letter and placed it inside of a book. This letter was subsequently forgotten about. After this, the book would later be loaned to someone else who contacted the child abuse hotline. During this time, the Duggars were scheduled to appear on the Oprah Winfrey Show. However, someone who knew all the inside details about the abuse would write a letter to the show. After the producers were aware of what had been going on, they would cancel the family's spot on the show. They would also contact the police and the child abuse hotline. By December of 2007, rumors of the abuse would run wild throughout forums on the internet. However, no media outlets would begin reporting on the case. Despite these rumors, TLC would premiere the first episode of 17 Kids and Counting. 1 year later, Josh, who was now 20 years old, married Anne Renee Duggar. Despite being married to Anna, Josh would meet up with a retired adult film actress in Philadelphia named Danica Dillon. According to Danica, Josh approached her in March of 2013 while she was dancing at a strip club. Here, Josh would compliment her, telling her how beautiful she was throughout the night. He would do this repeatedly before offering her $1,500 for sex at a nearby hotel. Danica would accept this offer. Once they were in the hotel room, Josh would turn violent. Later on, she would state, "He threw me onto the bed, and in all honesty, though it was consensual, it more or less felt like I was being raped." According to her, he would then force her to perform oral sex on him. Despite being featured in many hardcore adult films, she would describe the situation as terrifying. Once he was done, he would throw his payments on her dresser and leave the hotel. It would later be discovered that while Josh had intercourse with Danica, his wife was pregnant. Despite this, Josh would apologize to Danica, explaining that he was not that type of person. Again, they would go to a hotel room and have intercourse. She would later state that the second time around, he was a different person and not in a good way. This time, he had to be in complete control and was obsessed with having power over her. The entire encounter, Danica had 911 pre-dialed on her phone, which was hidden under her pillow. It wouldn't be until May of 2015, 7 years later, that the media outlets would publish articles regarding Josh's rampant abuse within the household. Following this, Josh would take to social media, writing an apology. In this post, he would write, "12 years ago, as a young teenager, I acted inexcusably, for which I am extremely sorry and deeply regret. I confessed this to my parents, who took several steps to help me address the situation. We spoke with authorities where I confessed my wrongdoing, and my parents arranged for me and those affected by my actions to receive counseling." Around this time, Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar would be interviewed on TV. During the interview, they would play down Josh's crimes, stating that Josh only touched the girls over their clothes, which is a lie. Despite this, Jim Bob would continue to repeat this statement throughout the interview. He would also go on to say that it was only for a few seconds. 2 of Josh's victims would also be interviewed. Here they would admit that they were being abused by their older brother, but would also state things such as, "I do want to speak up in his defense against people who are calling him a child molester or a pedophile or a rapist. That is so overboard and a lie." As other YouTubers have pointed out, it was clear they had been coached in what to say during the interview. And with this, TLC would remove the show from their network. Only a few weeks later, the show would be canceled entirely. 1 month later in July, Ashley Madison, a website for extramarital affairs, would suffer a security breach by a team of hackers. The group, calling themselves the Impact Team, would threaten to release the data to the public if the site did not shut down. Ashley Madison refused to do this. And so, in August of 2015, the group would leak over 60 gigabytes of personal information from the users of the site. Josh Duggar would be one of these users. It would be found that Josh had 2 accounts on the site, paying $1,000 per month for 2 separate subscriptions to the site. In the information that was released, it would be found that he paid $250 for a guaranteed affair. Once the story broke, Josh would release another apology stating, "While espousing faith and family values, I have secretly over the last several years been viewing pornography on the internet, and this became a secret addiction and I became unfaithful to my wife." Things would quiet down for the next few years until 2019. Unfortunately for Josh, things would only get worse from here on out. At this time, he would be employed by Wholesale Motor Cars. Unknown to the public at the time, Josh had made an agreement with his wife Anna. In order to curb his porn addiction, they would install software called Covenant Eyes onto all his personal and work devices. Covenant Eyes is a program which allows an individual to monitor another's activities on all their devices. However, a friend of Josh would tell him how to bypass Covenant Eyes by installing a Linux partition onto his computer. For those watching who are not tech savvy, a Linux partition is a second operating system within one computer. This is accessed when the computer is first booting up and pressing a certain key on the keyboard. The software is not compatible with Linux, so any and all of his activity would not be reported back to Anna. He could boot up Windows to do his work and then boot into Linux to do as he wished. On May 13th of 2019 at 1:43 p.m., Josh would install Linux onto his work computer to bypass Covenant Eyes. Once the Linux partition had booted up, Josh would be free to look at whatever he wanted without his wife finding out. With this newly found freedom, he would download BitTorrent as well as the Tor browser and access the deep web. The deep web itself is not illegal. The deep web is any web page that is not accessible via a traditional search engine such as Google, Bing, etc. Your email, bank statements, government files cannot be accessed through a search engine and thus can be considered part of the deep web. The deep web is useful, especially for countries with oppressive governments such as China and North Korea to access information from the outside world. However, illegal activity is also rampant. Sites with these illegal activities are referred to as the dark web. And this is what Josh Duggar would access once he knew his wife couldn't monitor his usage. However, even though she wasn't able to watch what he was doing, someone else was. On May 14th at 4:49 p.m., Josh would send a text to his wife stating, "Got stuck here, still not free yet. I'm going to aim for tomorrow just after lunch." Rather than actually go back to work, Josh would download a file titled webcamcollectionprevs.zip from Tor. This archive would contain CP. Then at 5:42 p.m., law enforcement would notice that a user was sharing a video file with the title of muv_0216.mp4 on a peer-to-peer network. Investigators would use a law enforcement-only program called Torrential Downpour to download this file and view its contents. According to official documents, this video would showcase two 7-year-old girls. Investigators would report the same video would show an adult male forcing himself on one of the two. An hour after downloading the video, Josh would send a picture of the car lot to his wife, proving that he was there to her and then later to investigators. He would spend the next few hours downloading many pictures and videos of hardcore CP. Josh would download files with the names of playtoysweetie.7zip, pedomom.wmv, as well as many other illegal files I cannot name here on YouTube. On May 15th, 2019 at 6:45 p.m., law enforcement would download a file with the title of marissa.zip from Josh. After the archive was opened, 65 illegal images of a girl around the age of 7 would be found inside. Both the zip file and the video would be analyzed and found to have originated from the IP address 167.224.196.113 in Little Rock, Arkansas. Detectives and special agents would then contact the internet service provider Ozarks Go, where they would request the subscriber information from the IP address. On October 7th of 2019, Ozarks Go would respond to the request with the information. It would be found that the IP address had originated from a used car dealership by the name of Wholesale Motor Cars. And with this, law enforcement would apply for a warrant to search the premises for CP. On November 4th of 2019, this warrant would be granted. Only 4 days later, law enforcement would execute this warrant and head over to the car dealership. It was there that they would speak to Josh Duggar. Without being told what they were investigating, Josh would state, "What is this all about? Has someone been downloading child pornography?" Investigators would further question him, asking him who had access to his phone and laptop. Josh would explain that his coworkers had access, indicating that he may have been attempting to pin everything on them. Then when he was questioned about his HP desktop PC, he would become very nervous. Josh would then be informed they had traced the uploading of CP from his IP address. According to sources, Josh Duggar did not understand the severity of his crime. In his mind, he had done nothing wrong. This is someone who had never been held accountable for anything in his entire life. While searching his computer, investigators would find 2 torrent files titled DD and DD1. They would then enter the file names into a government database of CP. It would be found that these files which Josh had in his possession were Daisy's Destruction. Daisy's Destruction is a video from the dark web showing the torture and violent sexual assaults of an 18-month-old baby. This video in particular has been described as one of the worst child abuse videos in existence. An agent of this case would state this video is one of the top 5 worst he's ever had to review. Other agents having to view the tape would break down in tears. According to sources, the video is so horrendous that at a time, it was thought to be an urban myth. Investigators would find many other illegal pictures and videos on his computer. However, these files would only be identified by their thumbnails after recovering them. Josh had previously downloaded and deleted them immediately. Later on in court, it would be revealed that this is typical for offenders as it is dangerous to keep the files on the computer. And with this, Josh would be arrested. During trial, pictures and clips of the illegal content he had been viewing would be shown in the courtroom. Some friends and family would be disgusted to find that Josh had been viewing and getting pleasure from the most violent CP available. Josh Duggar would be sentenced to 12.5 years in prison. His release date is currently October 2nd, 2032. Despite all his crimes, his wife Anna still remains married to him.